how do we attract investment in the oil and gas and energy sector across the entire value chain in Africa, because that's the only way we're going to drive investments and we're going to drive development. And really forgetting about that, how do we, most importantly, how do we make money? We need to get ourselves on the table so that we can make as much money as possible. I'm just going to say it that way because that's the only way we're going to really drive development. I need to see you guys making boatloads of money in that sense. That's just the way I look at it, because that's ultimately the way we've been able to drive. Of course, if you make it in an ethical manner, you can reinvest it and you can do whatever it is, but we need to afford ourselves the opportunities. And that's ultimately why the chamber was made. The idea becomes, if at all we have oil and gas opportunities springing up in Namibia, in Senegal, in Cote d'Ivoire recently, where developments are likely to start already, why are we not seeing a hell lot of Nigerian entrepreneurs going out and being able to take advantage of the service opportunities that are there? If I can be in Congo, Brazzaville, like we were last week, and I go there and I discover a company I've never heard of, Winghua, a Chinese company I've never heard of that does onshore, and that is doing 40,000 barrels at the moment, and that is likely to be doing in the next 1 year developments that are going to bring them to 80,000. There is no way anybody can tell me the Nigerian companies that have been operating in Nigeria in the shallow waters and onshore cannot go to Congo Brazzaville and take an onshore opportunity. But it's just not happening. And the question becomes, how do we make that possible? How do we make sure that Nigerian companies can also move? Of course, not the ones, we need to have companies that have the capacity to be able to do it. That's absolutely clear. But ultimately, where the capacity exists, we should be seeing much more of that. Namibia is on everybody's lips. Namibia is blowing up. Namibia is a new frontier. Namibia is 2.6 million people. Even if Namibia wanted, it is impossible for Namibia to have the capacity to be able to service that particular industry. If you're looking at jurisdiction, if you're looking at laws, if you're looking at culture, if you're looking at all of that, Nigeria entrepreneurs should be best placed to be able to go there and provide those services. We're just not seeing that.
We have women in different parts of the continent that are still, I would say struggling, but they are still not being heard. They are still not at the table. Nigeria is very well advanced, but Nigeria is still not there when it comes to outside Nigeria. So there is need for collaboration. Vena talked about that. But I would like to stress on the point of need for collaboration for the women in Nigeria to actually collaborate with other women and even the men, some of the men out there doing it and doing it well. He talked about Namibia. Namibia is a new baby on the block. There's a lot of opportunities in Namibia. We have opportunities at the services side. We need women to go out there. You can come to the chamber. We are ready to work with you as women, other entrepreneur, or you're in C-suites. We're ready. You can team up with men there, or you can team up with women as well. So collaboration is key, and we will encourage every woman-owned business to be part of the chamber through Alben. We need the skills in Nigeria. There's quite a lot in Nigeria that we really need to be, that those skills to be exploited outside Nigeria. I know we need that in Nigeria, but as well, if we want to actually close the gap of energy poverty, that's the main goal. The continent, we need to close the gap. And we can't close the gap, just Nigerian closing the gap, but we need to support other states to close the gap as well. So for us to have that, collaboration is key.
The beauty about Africa is everything you want to qualify, you find in Africa. If you talk about a developed market, when it comes to oil and gas, established market, oil and gas, emerging oil and gas, you find all in this continent called Africa. prior to 2024, I think the buzz everywhere under the sun was Guyana, 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 right? And if you look at the number of wells that have been drilled in Guyana, their total reserves are about 11 billion barrels, equivalent of oil. Equivalent, I didn't say of oil, equivalent. And with lesser number of oil, lesser number of drilling activities, some humongous discoveries been made in some place called Namibia. One company called GAP, I always liken that company to Joberman in Nigeria. Just a group of young chaps with some little money to spend. Some people believed in them, empowered them. They went into Namibia, believed in some big service company, joined hands together, and they made what remains today one of the biggest discoveries under the sun, 10 billion barrels. So you can imagine, I didn't say equivalent. There's a difference between equivalent and reserve itself. Just why you think you should be celebrating that, we just heard not too long ago that after many years, after over 2-3 decades of partnering and making a lot of money in Nigeria, FAMFA is delving into Sierra Leone. They're going to invest in 6 deep water blocks. If that doesn't excite you, today, the biggest investor in oil and gas in the West African subcontinent is ENI. They're pumping about $6 billion into Ivory Coast. They made a discovery, and now they're all producing. Gingered by that, Shell is now hustling for 3 additional blocks in Ivory Coast. If that does not excite you, the big Nigeria, where in the past you used to scratch ground small and find oil, now wants to reestablish itself as a place to be in Africa. Because the beauty about the country Nigeria is that there's really nothing to prove. It's a proven and established country with about 7-8 hydrocarbon basins. Only one has been explored and established to be petroliferous. And if you're a geoscientist, if you look at all the discoveries in West Africa, they all sit at water depth far, far below shallow to equivalent depths in Namibia, in Ivory Coast, where humongous discoveries have been made. So suddenly, there should be a reason why you should focus on Africa. And ever since 2020, there's been one organization that's been very bullish, that's been very vociferous, that has been out there telling the world why look at Africa as Africa Energy Chambers.
Nigeria has huge opportunities, and those opportunities are there for us to take. And as I was talking to a group of people yesterday, we're just going through what I call the new energy reawakening in Nigeria. Look, in every disruptive structure, in every disruptive economy, there's always that void to create value. And the Nigerian oil and gas subset is there. Let me give you some numbers. 89% of Nigeria's foreign exchange is derived from oil and gas. 89%. So if we go back to see the disruption in the lack of dollars in this economy, it's not far-fetched. If 89% is from oil and gas, and we all know what has happened to the oil and gas sector since 2015, lack of adequate investment, security, production went down to as low as below 1 million barrels a day. So we can all understand something's got to give. You cannot spend what you do not have. So this economy resulted into printing Naira to offset that, and it cannot close the gap. So today we've gone from 430 to 1,500. It's very clear. We all saw it coming. But the good news about where Nigeria is today, and this is the opportunity we all, with the help and the aid of the chamber, we all have to take. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. If you think about what NNPC is saying, they're declaring World War VII in the oil and gas sector. But it's real. If they do declare the war, that means there's more work and more opportunities to be taken, because to change Nigeria's situation, we just need to move the needle to 2 million barrels and the dollars will come in, and in 6 months, our problem's over. Simple. Nigeria's cycle is that simple. It's not going to take a year, but this is where the opportunities come from. The marginal field round, 54, I think 53 or 55 assets were put on the block. But the mistake that was made is they were asking for signature bonuses that made no sense. So companies were paying $10, $15 million for assets with 2-3 million barrels 2P. But we're all in a rush to participate in the sector. We all went crazy, we paid. Then we realized we needed money to then bring the oil up. Let's never forget this. In the oil business, the reality value is when you bring the oil out of the ground. I don't care what you have. You might have the best asset in the world, 25 billion barrels reserves. If you're not producing it, you're worth zero.